Hello, and welcome to the Simply Business Interview Podcast, a podcast created by business owners for business owners. I am your host, John Jennings. I believe that most business owners are working way too hard for much too little. And one of our issues is that we overcomplexify things. I believe the answers are almost always within us or within our reach. I like to say that I'm a simple man with simple ideas. So welcome to Simply Business. All right, today we are joined by Mike Meador. He is the CFO of Nest Health. And, I usually bring on founders. Mike isn't the founder, but he's an early stage company and part of the leadership team. And one of the things that fascinates me about these guys, one is what they do. I'm always fascinated with companies that are trying to bring change and innovation into healthcare. But also, they've kind of built themselves from the ground up as a virtual company. Their leadership teams spread out across the country, and that always boggles my mind. I guess I'm still so traditional, even though I work virtually now. But still, from standpoint of building a team up virtually, is just a fascinating idea to me. So let me first toss over to Mike. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what goes on there at Nest Health.
Yeah, thanks, John. Mike Meador. Like you said, I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Nest Health. Nest Health is a home primary care provider focused on delivering care to Medicaid families. We are currently offering services in New Orleans and Baton Rouge in Louisiana, and Phoenix and Mojave County areas of Arizona. We were founded in 2021 by Dr. Rebecca Gee, who's the former Secretary of Health for the state of Louisiana, and came out of her understanding both as a practicing OBGYN and a mother of five, and her experience expanding Medicaid to the Louisiana population, and just seeing that in order to create better outcomes for families, we have to be more focused on preventative care earlier in their life cycle. And also, you can't focus just on children or just on adults. Families are their own dynamic that we have to care for in an entirety. And so that's what Nest Health does, is we focus on lower income households with multiple people in the house, including children, and we go to their homes. So we break down any access to care barriers that might exist and can do everything that a primary care provider can do. We just bring it in a bag with us to the homes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I'm very familiar with Medicaid, Medicare models, FQHCs, and the like, and engagement and retention of patients seems to be one of their big challenges. So this seems to be a way of fighting that challenge. How does that model work from a Medicaid reimbursement standpoint? I don't want to get too much in the weeds. I'm sure most of our listeners would hang up immediately. But one aspect of being an entrepreneur is coming up with creative models that will work. In healthcare, you have to get creative. So tell us a little bit more about that aspect.
Yeah, well, I'll try not to nerd out too much on it because I am the finance guy. So I
Yeah.
live in the reimbursement side of all of this. So it is definitely complicated. One thing that's worth noting about Medicaid in particular is that if you have worked with one Medicaid health insurer in a state, then you have worked with one Medicaid health insurer in one state.
Yeah.
Every plan has their own situation of how they're in the state, what their population looks like, and then every state is very different across the country in the way that they're operating Medicaid. So there's a lot of understanding of any state dynamics and then payer dynamics that we have to kind of pull in. Uh, Medicaid reimbursement is known for being very low. What I will say, though, is that the overall size of Medicaid is massive. There's over 77 million people on Medicaid and CHIP in the country, including over 40% of children and 40%
Oh,
of
wow.
births given year are on Medicaid. So it's massive. So the dollars are huge. But if you spread them across everybody, it looks pretty low on like a per individual thing that you're doing. So we
Right.
recognize that in-home and the care and the level of intensive care that we're doing isn't for everybody. So this is not a hang out the shingle and go hunt down individuals. We work really, really closely with insurance companies that are operating Medicaid to identify the population where this is the sweet spot for them, where there's some
Mm,
level of outsized utilization of inappropriate utilization in the healthcare system that doesn't make sense, and they're not getting any kind of a preventative care in place. And that's who we hyper focus in on. And we engage them in a way that nobody's been able to engage before because we're focused on the family outcomes, and we are available to them almost like a concierge service, including a 24/7 actively staffed nurse line from our providers so that we can avoid those inappropriate ER visits, which drive up the system. And then finally, I will say that a lot of people really focus on that fee for service reimbursement, but Medicaid is really kind of ahead of the game in terms of value focus, and that there's a ton of value around quality outcomes. And that's really where
right.
so we have a better understanding of the quality aspect and the value that that brings to insurance companies, what the reimbursements look like, the quality withholds, as well as, like you mentioned, retention. We're seeing 55% better retention rates for our population that's engaged with us versus those that aren't. So we're really helping the
Mm,
plan hold on to the members longer.
yeah, that's awesome. And such a it's a population that needs health. I mean, this is the population that's always talked about in the news. It's the population that, the latest, the government shutdown that when we're recording this just ended. Uh, Part of it was about this topic, this population. So it is top of mind for just about everyone who pays attention to what's going on in this very, as I always call it, this broken industry that we have called healthcare. So one talk a little bit about this, because when I work with entrepreneurs all the time, and so many of them, I don't care what industry in, so many of them have the shotgun approach of uh, you know I will serve anybody that will pay me. no and and I see bad decision after bad decision. In a parallel would be, if for you all, since you're located here in Louisville, if one patient in Louisville said, "Oh, I'd love to have a home health care," you stand up a whole, because you have one patient, and then it works or it doesn't work. You all are hyper focused in two geographies right now across the whole country, and I suppose you're thinking about where that third and fourth and fifth are going to be, but you're not thinking this is a nationwide, every zip code answer. This is going to be hyper focused in areas. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing worth noting is that we are a venture-backed company. Came out, we're a build co from ABC, which is developed by Joe Lonsdale, Palantir. So we got some heavy hitters kind of behind the scenes here. The funding environment really helps a lot with this level of focus. If you go back, 2017 to 2022 timelines, the focus is really just grow, 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 no matter what. You'll figure it out later, right? Kind of like the Amazon approach, right? Just
Yeah.
take over the world and then you'll make the financials work. Well, not every company can do that. And so I think we've seen a lot of companies get to a point where they've failed and the entire market has dramatically shifted. So we are in a place to benefit from that understanding that's happened really recently, where we are really focused on, okay, do we have a path that is going to create profitability in any incremental location that we're going to? And that is a combination of understanding what's the size of the population that we're able to care for. Are there dynamics, as you mentioned, in the reimbursement models or things that we're looking at? Who are the payers and the dynamics that we're able to launch with? And for us, because we do in-home care, what's the geography aspect, right?
Right.
We're able to operate in more rural locations than a typical clinic would be because we don't have to build a whole office to do that. But we can't go drive for 3 hours to see one patient at the same
Right.
time. So there's some level of a density that has to be in place. So it's really, really important for us to understand what is the size of the population that we need to target, what are the expected dynamics of the payers that we're having conversations with, and like how do we stage them through over the next several years? Because I've worked at places before where we launched 7 new markets in 1 year. And 2 years later, they were all struggling. And it was only the markets that we really dedicated our focus around and like made it make sense from the beginning that were successful.
Yeah. And you don't have to disclose it, but have you all identified where your third market, fourth market's going to be? Or are you still, is that still open?
We are in active conversations in 4 different states with payers at the moment. And so
Yeah.
I won't say where those are just yet, but they're
Yeah.
deep in conversations, different levels. We won't be able to operate all of them this year. So if they all continue through to, really we want to make this happen, then we will have to stage them over the next couple of years to
Right.
not overwhelm the team and not get to the point where we're flailing.
Yeah. Well, and that's the point of focus and managed growth. Yeah, I've been in that grow at all costs kind of model, and you make a lot of bad decisions. I see it far too often. Just like no, that's not a good decision. So let's talk about the remote aspect of your company, because this, as I said, this fascinates me. I'm just a little old school at times about. So y'all have been built from the ground up. You're located in Louisville, Kentucky, but your founder and CEO, I guess, is in Louisiana, and you got people out west. And how did that come about?
Yeah, so we are based in New Orleans, Louisiana, because as I mentioned, Dr. Rebecca Gee is located there. That's the headquarters. We have kind of unfair advantages because of relationships that she has to get off the ground, right? That's one of the hardest things in healthcare is getting those inaugural contracts that are in place with a big enough population to make it make sense. And that requires understanding all the dynamics that are related in the politics and the structures. And so that is why we started in New Orleans, in addition to the fact that Medicaid New Orleans has one of the most abysmal outcomes across the board. Uh, so when Rebecca got started, she is an incredible political thinker, very, very visionary in her thinking, and needed support in the detailed operations that have to happen. Right, this is healthcare. So healthcare, you have to get a lot right from the beginning, right? You can't stumble your way through providing care to patients. There's a lot of compliance, there's data security, all this stuff has to happen. So she put a search out to find somebody to lead this, and has a co-founder, Rebecca Kavusi, who was the Western president at Landmark and COO at Babylon Health, and has experience developing these things. Rebecca is probably the best. Rebecca Kavusi is probably the best person that can exist to develop this from the ground up operationally, but she does not live in New Orleans. And she has this life. She's successful, and she lives in Seattle, Washington, and is not going to move to New Orleans. So it is a decision that we have made that we can get outsized talent by allowing the virtual aspect.
Mhm.
At this point, everybody is super familiar with these Zoom calls, right? I mean, look, we're on a Zoom call right now,
Right
right?
now, yeah.
No problem chatting with you. And so we're here, everybody's used to this. Uh, I do believe very firmly in video and seeing where people are, the facial expressions. There's still a lot of value to that, and
Right.
being able to just calling people, pick up the phone, message them on, Teams or Slack or whatever you happen to use to do that. But we've consistently just pulled people from across the company because we're not looking for people that are in one geography that we happen to be in. We're trying to find the best people that are out there to do what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the upside, obviously, of remote work. You're not geographically bound with the talent in that area. You can bring people from anybody, even around the world, if you choose to. So it has, I don't know if that's democratized the workforce, or how you want to say that, but it's basically opened it up to uh, anyone who has the right skills, right talent, can
Exactly right. I mean, you
participate.
end up with, you know, from my finance standpoint, you can get more cost-effective labor in a lot of places as well, right? Because I
Yeah.
don't need to have somebody live in like an urban city. We've got people that live in more rural parts of the country doing complicated work. It's just fine.
Yeah. Excellent. So What's the biggest challenge you guys are facing or have faced in these early years? What's what keeps you guys up at night?
So we've just closed a Series A round of about $23 million, and we are making a dramatic shift into that scaling focus as a company. So we've gotten through this phase of, is there a product market fit? We have a strong belief in that at this point, right? We've got people beating the doors down to come to us. Uh, are we successful in this? We've got amazing outcomes clinically. We've been able to engage patients at a great rate, and we're on track for all of our longer term targets for those. So those are great. We are now shifting into what we call letting go of Legos. So we have a handful of people doing everything, and we are shifting to getting more specialized people or hands-on or implementing vendor AI type solutions to automate things that are going to come out of more manual and individual hands. So that's a really, really hard shift to make. And
Yeah,
we are collectively doing that as a company right now to focus on standardization, improving efficiency across the board while we look to those incremental couple of geographies as we continue to grow.
yeah. So is standardization more difficult in a remote virtual environment?
For us, most of our standardization really focuses on that core clinical team. That's the vast focus that we have, and that is delivered in the market. And as I mentioned, Medicaid is different in every state, so there will always be differences, but I would
Sure.
say we can get to like 80 to 90% consistency across different geographies. We are seeing some differences already pop up just culturally out of Arizona versus Louisiana. There's also differences in the way that they're physically structured, right? Phoenix is massive, but it's a more modern city. Louisiana or New Orleans is older, right? There's more potholes in Louisiana than you possibly believe. It's like that's hard from like a driving standpoint. So there are elements there. Uh, but our focus on standardization is on that clinical aspect because that's the core of the company and what we're really building.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been to both those cities in the last year, and they are about as different as you can possibly get. Both maybe massive in their own way,
Both
but
hot though. So
what's
I'm
that?
waiting for us. We're both hot, so I'm waiting for us to like get in more northern city for
Yeah.
some summer travel.
Well, Phoenix, it's a dry heat, right?
Yeah, 110, but it's dry.
Yeah, 110, 120. I don't care how dry it is; it's still hot. Um, so standardization, growth, strategic growth in some targeted areas. If you're going to put a third leg to that stool, what's next? The third big strategy you might be focusing on.
Yeah, it's efficiency. So making really, really good use of the time that our providers have, both in the home, because that's such a critical moment, especially the Medicaid population. You go through all this effort to finally engage somebody. We need to cram as much healthcare and as much social care, behavioral health care into those visits as possible, because it could take us a while potentially to reconnect with them again.
Yeah,
And so focusing on cramming all that in. Uh, Cancellations are always a challenge for any healthcare provider, and it
right.
is quadruply so when you are taking the time to drive to somebody's home. So uh, being efficient about our providers' time. No one wants a job where you just drive to nothing half of the day. And
Yeah,
so we're
ring
not
the
doing
doorbell, nobody's there, right?
that. Like you're not delivering care. Like nobody wants that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Um, that's awesome. So, what's your background? What made you go, man, I want to be part of this creative organization? Tell us a little bit about where you came from.
Yeah, so not to go way too back in the weeds, I originally was a teacher. I taught math in middle and high school in Connecticut for 4 years, and very early on realized that I don't want to do this full time. I really am more interested in an intellectual challenge rather than a behavioral challenge that I have to deal with. And so I started looking for other jobs. I became an actuary, and I learned what an actuary was from a couple of people that I went to teacher school with that had been actuaries and they hated it and they left to become teachers. So everything they hated sounded completely fine to me.
That's
And
funny.
that's the worst that it's got, then that sounds incredible. So I took a bunch of actuarial exams, applied across the country. I got a job at Humana, which is what brought us to Kentucky back
Okay.
in 2014. And I happened to drop initially into valuing programs that were focused on in-home healthcare for a Medicare Advantage population under Humana. So I've been
Okay.
really pretty heavily focused
You were
on,
right. You were right in that niche.
I
That's
mean, just like dropped right into it. Humana's really been a big leader on in-home care for a
yeah.
long time. Well, they've had a whole segment, devoted to it for a while. Um, so came through Humana, did a bunch of different things. At one point in there, eventually realized that I'm less interested in being the cog in the wheel and more understanding of the entire strategy and all of the elements and pulling all of those together. And so I began to look really closely for jobs that would allow me to bring that aspect to it. I finished my time at Humana where my last position was supporting startup companies that Humana was investing in developing their financial prowess and understanding, especially from like an analytics and an FP&A side.
Yeah.
So very niche, and specifically on in-home care. Eventually got recruited out by one of those companies, and I led financial and data analytics at that company for a couple of years before we got acquired, and spent a little bit of time at that acquire supporting the integration into that larger company. But at this point, like I got the startup bug. Like I got to get to
Yeah.
back into this company. And a recruiter found me with Nest Health. And after a decade in healthcare, this focus on family care, I mean, 10 years in healthcare, never thought about, hey, why don't we just care for whole families instead of individuals? Because everything I've ever done is individual analytics. And
Yeah.
that's somehow revolutionary in a way that it shouldn't be. And it's like, this is so simple, but so genius at the same time. And so,
Yeah.
coupled with the incredible team that we have, both of the Rebeccas are phenomenal, have incredible backgrounds. I mean, just can't say no to that opportunity.
Yeah. That's interesting. We probably have some mutual friends. My wife actually was a middle school math teacher as well. She she burned out from that, but she didn't go become an actuary. Uh, I it was funny. In college, I looked at being an actuary, and I was like probably those people you talked about. Like, oh no, I can't, I can't do this all day long. So yeah, it's one of those unique jobs. Either you're wired for it or you're not. So that's interesting. Well, Mike, I so appreciate your time and love the story, and I love hearing about organizations that are trying to be creative and providing solutions to healthcare. And yeah, you're right. The no one talks about treating the family. It's so obvious. It's like smack your head moment. Like duh. Why hadn't we thought of this? But it's so obvious that yeah, I'm wishing you guys the greatest success, and look forward to seeing where it goes. How best to find if someone is interested in learning more about Nest, would like to reach out to you guys? How do they get a hold of you all?
Yeah, we have a website, nesthealth.com, and there is a contact link there. You can reach us directly that way.
Okay, very good. Well, again, Mike, thank you for your time. Appreciate learning more about you and Nest Health.
Yeah, I really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked it, please share or like it on whatever platform you use. You can find me on social media. On most platforms, I'm John K. Jennings. My first book is also available. Your Baby is Ugly tells you about 10 truths that business owners need to hear, but often won't, and how to overcome them. You can find it on Amazon. Just search for Your Baby is Ugly. And be watching for our next episode, where I'll interview another business owner who will share their stories and insights into what it's like to create a great business.